All right, bro. Nothing too incriminating. Here we go.
Man, spell that word.
Incriminating? Bro, have you ever tried to spell entrepreneur?
Several times.
Thank God for autocorrect, bro.
That's exactly it.
Every time I fucking got to go into like a text message and type it out so autocorrect hits it and copy and paste and take it.
It's a done deal.
It's all right. Woo-saw. We in?
We in.
Bro, perfect angle on the fucking crotch shot. All right. All right, y'all. What's up? And welcome back to another episode of the Barcode Collective podcast. It's Jacob Saldana checking in live from our little training space up here in Spacebar Wellness. So per usual, if you hear that background noise, just know that we're out here in these streets actually doing work. Not just talking about it. So you might hear a little, this is live in action. Got my guy, Miguel Sanchez, Miguel keeping it clean Sanchez, on the mic, man. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you so much. Just a quick little background story. Met this guy from a mutual friend and business owner, came through, got him in the ice bath. We've kind of always just hit it off with our conversations. And I recently hired him on to hold me accountable for some of this training, as I've used all you guys as just a place for me to complain about my injuries and my nagging issues. I thought it was about time to bring on some professional help to call me out on my shit and make sure that I'm in here getting it in twice a week, creating a little stability in this hip. So, by the time I become 45, 50, hopefully with some kids someday, I'll be able to pick them little rugrats up.
No problem.
So with all that being said, man, thank you for the time today, brother.
Man, that's an incredible intro. Thank you for having me.
I blacked out there. I don't even know what I said.
You went in.
I went in. But per usual, man, like we've had some, real conversations. Most of the conversations we have kind of go that route with me. I try not to just have the superficial bullshit, especially if I'm going to bring you on board as part of the squad and help hold me accountable. I got to know, some deeper rooted things from you. And we've had some of those, but I want to spend this next hour getting to know you a little bit better, a little deeper. So let's just start with your origin story a little bit, man. Like what's your background? Where are you from? As much as you're willing to share on the front end, then I'll see if I can dig a little deeper, pull some more out.
Where do we begin? Grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, man. I was born and raised, well, more so raised in La Puente. Was born in South Amani. My parents are both immigrants turned citizens, so first generation Mexican American. And growing up in the town that I grew up, and I saw a lot of what we called what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of bad things in the sense. A lot of bad. Let me simplify it. A lot of bad things where it was concerning, right? From like gangs and a little bit of violence and, early pregnancy and the whole nine. And so, as much as I can remember, it was my parents' responsibility or forefront took it upon themselves to like, hey, how can we expose our son to a different environment so that, he doesn't follow the steps we followed, right? Because my parents had me at 18, 19, at a very young age, right? And so like, it's a different generation and whatnot. But I can remember some of the things that for me as a kid didn't make sense, but my mom would, step in and make some changes. So that was exposed to different, right? One of the earliest things that I can remember was that of switching me high schools, for example. Freshman year of high school, it was a parent teacher conference type of thing, open house. And, and she walks into the campus and she sees, 16-year-olds pregnant and like left and right. I went to Mountain View High School, my freshman year of high school, which is in Almani. And my mom was like, without even consulting it with me or talking to me about it, she just did her parent thing. She's like, you are not going to finish school here. Like, I don't want you to be exposed to that. I'm trying to avoid all the mistakes that I've made. So she, took me on to a private public school. I went to a small little school in Pomona. It's in Cal Poly Pomona campus. It's called iPoly, International Polytechnic High School.
Gotcha.
From there, I was able to see different. So since I can remember, I've always been attracted to different. So being Mexican, I wanted to see what the other cultures were. And so, when it came to music, it was the complete opposite of what my dad was listening to, whether it be like, soul, R&B, a little bit of rap, just different. And that led me to then build these relationships with people. And I played the sport of basketball as well. So then I was again exposed to different cultures and different mindsets and different belief systems. Grew up in a religious divided home. So that played a lot of roles too on my curiosity of how other people lived. So in growing up, there was no traditions, there was no Christmas, there was no birthdays and stuff like that. And so that's all I knew. And so the moment I got exposed to what that looks like on a different, family standpoint, it was like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like you pick and choose. It's like, okay, I got exposed to this. Let me take that. And then maybe eventually when I have my own family, I want to run with that. And so, being in a non-traditional way of being raised is what I felt like led me to be even more curious about, how I was going to carry my adult self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say, you said religiously divided, was one of your parents practicing one thing?
Correct.
Another? Okay. Well,
yeah. So my dad was raised Catholic, but when he became an adult, he became a non-practicing Catholic. So it was just like, hey, I just go by that title because my grandparents still follow it. And then my mom grew up a Jehovah's Witness. And so, so I grew up with those principles and values and teachings. It wasn't until I became an adult where I decided to kind of just like take what I needed and just stop practicing.
Gotcha. And then I guess so Jehovah's Witness, they largely don't follow a lot of those like typical like celebration of your birthdays, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And how was that growing up as far as like, your friend groups and seeing others celebrating Christmas? And I mean, did you have any exposure through those relationships where you're at an early age, you're like, man, I'm trying to fuck with that Christmas right now.
So when I was a kid going into my early teens, it was a norm. It wasn't a regular day for me. It wasn't until high school where I became close with some people. And one of my best friends at the time, he was the first person to be like, hey, my family are getting together. I know you don't do it, but we would love to have you. And I remember the first time being exposed to a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas, pre-Christmas dinner or gathering. I was like, yo, this is cool.
Yeah.
There's nothing bad about this. It's just family coming together, having conversations, having a good time. But, obviously then there's the teaching of like the doctrine of the origin and how it just doesn't make sense. And so, yeah, there was like, they created division internally.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just for, curiosity's sake and just learning on my own. So what is the underground like, or the underlying reasoning for not celebrating, like say Thanksgiving, for example? That's not a, like a religious practice. It's more of a, cultural American thing or whatever it might be. So is there something specifically that says like, we don't, like what's the reason?
In simple forms is the belief system is we only follow the word, which is the Bible. And in nowhere in the Bible does it say any of these things that are man-made. So we're going to follow what we're being instructed by the word of God. And anything else is obsolete, doesn't exist.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And now that you are grown and you've been kind of open to a lot of different things, like where are you at with that?
It goes back to that feeling of being a part of something, right? Of, that family quality time. I feel like that was like one of the missing pieces growing up. And so it's just one thing that I'm attracted to. It's not necessarily the holiday. It's more so what it does, the spirit behind it.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, cause as somebody who is not religious and, I grew up Catholic or whatever, it's like, I I don't know. I don't know what direction I'm necessarily headed, but I do think about like tradition, and a lot of like our traditions I've moved away from as I moved away from, my family. And, a lot of, I worry about that sometimes when I think about what I'm passing on to my kids, like even culturally, like when I grew up, I, went to Chicano preschool, and I was just surrounded by, the Hispanic heritage, and like grew up with that. And like I moved down here, and it's like, I'm not carrying that on, maybe I feel like I got a piece of it because I'm living in Echo Park, but that's just getting gentrified real quick, and I'm probably contributing to that at some level. So it's like, I'm going to lose, you know what I mean? So like I worry, like what am I going to pass on? Like, what are my traditions? What am I going to do? Am I going to just, because honestly, like I don't even really celebrate Christmas or any of these things. Like, at best I get Laura a card and we try to get a little tree and put a light on it. But like, I've been so inundated in the shit that I'm doing and trying to keep these businesses alive or whatever, that it's like, I have lost so many of those things that make life enjoyable,
I understand.
So it's, I worry about that sometimes.
Yeah.
About like what I'm going to pass on, or, how I'm going to, because I also think very logically, where it's like, I don't want to lie to my kid about some Santa Claus that doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I overthink things.
We're on the same boat. we're on the same boat. And I can see how it's hard too. I mean, I'm sure for my mom specifically, it was hard growing up, me going to school and seeing all this stuff and be like, whether it be a Valentine's Day card or anything like that. And it's like, okay, how do I have this conversation with my child to let him know that we don't do that stuff?
Yeah.
And then more so in a way where he can understand,
right.
Not because it's like, this is the rule and that's it. Yeah.
How are you now? I mean, did you have any issue? Like, that just seems very authoritative, It's like, that doesn't, like, you can't explain that to me. Like, logically, I almost got into a fucking fight at the Apple store yesterday because what they were telling me just logically didn't make sense. And I was not going to walk away from this strap that I wanted to have because they only had one size. Yeah. So I just was like, anyways.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes. So that's the thing though, like, right. As a kid, when you're being guided or parented, it's like, they know best. So I'm just going to shut up and listen. At least that's what you think. Right. But it isn't until like you become an adult and you experience your own thing. And you're like, wait a minute. There's multiple ways of seeing these things. Yeah. There's reasons behind. I wasn't told the reasons why. It was just more like, this is what it is. And so you just got to trust and believe it. And being the person that I am, funny thing is, I'll never forget, I had a conversation with my mom and it got deep because I was asking questions and I wanted to just kind of get some answers. And the way my mom shut it down was like, you know what, Mijo, I can't have a conversation with you because you think too deep. And I was like, I'm sorry.
No. I mean, because by those conversations, I mean, obviously the next step is her questioning a lot of things that she's, practicing or whatever.
Exactly. And I see that part too.
Yeah. And so my parents are, they're very active in the church, and more so since we've all gotten grown and moved out, like they've, really committed and doubled down, and like they're there multiple times a week. My dad volunteers, but like you would never know that through conversation, and like they're hanging out, and they're, like had my mom try shrooms and shit. You know what I mean? Like they're very open to all of this. So they're not like it's very close. So you never really would know this. Right. And I felt in my role in my family as the youngest, I was always the one that would just say shit off the wall, just try to get a rise out of people, try to get attention. And I'm somewhat of a know-it-all. Like I really try to, like, things got to make sense, and I'm really trying to, come to these conclusions on my own in so many different areas, right? So sometimes, if I'm feeling a certain type of way around like religion or heaven or whatever it might be, like I'm going to question that within myself. And what I've found was so it's this idea of like trying to be right, like we have these conversations or these arguments for the sake of like trying to be right. And I found myself kind of judging a little bit, or even having conversations with my parents that to get them to think about like, who the fuck am I to try to, because like I started feeling actually really bad about it.
Yeah,
like I mean, talking, like just be like, what was the sermon about today? Like talking, just like, like mocking, a little bit. And it was just like
a-hole-ish.
I caught myself. I was like, wow, like how fucked up that is when we're doing all these things to try to just get right with ourselves and feel comfortable with, living this life. And a big part of living this life is embracing death, or like trying to get right with death and what that means for us, right? So religion is largely a big part of that, right? It's like, what you believe after this is and whatnot. So it's like, I felt almost like I was like shaking that a little bit for like my parents as they're getting, older, and I felt really, once I kind of came to that conclusion, I was like, damn, like I'm a fucking, that's,
Cause I mean, like one thing that when I finally had the conversation with my mom where I told her I wasn't practicing anymore, right? It was like, one thing I made clear was like, listen, just because I'm making the decision not to do it doesn't mean I'm not going to take some, values and principles I learned from it. But not just that, I want you to understand that what it does for you, it doesn't do that for me. And I'm not knocking it. Like, if you love this is your safe haven. This is what gives you that motivation and that energy to continue to believe. And by all means, like, and I'm going to support you. But like, unfortunately, that it doesn't do that for me. And that put her in a position where she was like, okay, now I think I understand where my son's coming from. When before it was like, just like nagging. Like, have you gone?
Yeah.
Have you read the book?
Yeah.
Have you gone? I read the book.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. He's like, okay, I get it now. I'm gonna stop pressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you, man. Like, yeah. I mean, I guess that, at some point you were like, shit, it don't say in the Bible that I can get these gains. So that's when you walked away from it, when you try to throw that barbell over your head? You were looking for like coaching cues on how to properly snatch on page whatever of the gospel, and it just wasn't there. So
no,
like,
part of it, weirdly enough, as I expressed this, I always had that ambition side of me, and being part of it, unfortunately, was being suppressed. Where it's like, hey man, all glory to God only. Like you can't have any type of glory towards yourself. Like you can't be like, showby or like arrogant, or like it wasn't guided properly. It was more like, it was just like a non-negotiable no.
Yeah.
And so internally I always had that fire. It's like, I want to do more. I want to explore more. But then it was immediately like shut down. And so that's what kind of encouraged me to like, all right, let me step away a little bit. Right. And going to school, and then finally getting introduced to, wellness and training, and outside of like other things that happened in my life that also pushed me into the wellness field. But that was like the start of it. I was like, okay, I want to see what it feels like to be all in.
Yeah.
With no reservations or hesitations. Obviously, human nature, we all gonna have that little doubt, but like being able to suppress it, just go, opposed to be like, nah, man, just no.
Yeah, man.
That's scary.
I'm picking up that, you don't like to be put in a box.
No pun intended. Exactly. Yeah. So the reason why Jake, a little context, he's bringing that up is because we've had these conversations before of certain people can work being in a box and some people just cannot. Right. And it's just a matter of being in different environments and being exposed to different, right? So that you have a better understanding of what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah. And
I'm fortunate enough in a sense where I've been able to push myself and put myself in these weird situations where I've, created this tolerance for different, right? That's going to be probably the word of the entire theme of today's episode, different. Where I've done drastic moves. Like I moved to Florida out of a whim one time, and I was like, okay, let's see what I'm made of, and I did the same thing when I moved to San Diego. I was like, I don't know anyone, but F it. Like, let me see what I'm made of. Right.
It makes a lot of sense now I know the context of like your background, you know what I mean? Like that becomes people's metric, and I think the same for me. I'm trying to see what I'm made of, and by doing so, I'm gathering stories. And I've mentioned on several occasions, like one of the driving factors is like imagining myself as an old man in my deathbed and acquiring stories, and by doing that, you got to test yourself, I don't want to look, how boring is that going to be? You're posted up in that little Tempur-Pedic, like little bed that kind of props you up, and you got the little grandkids around you, and you're going to be like, man, like, I followed the rules like a motherfucker, bro.
Who says that?
You know what I mean?
I can't do that. I can't live with myself if I went. I can't.
Like it just, so I get it. Like that makes a lot of sense, you know?
Yeah.
And, we're trying to be, like I'm still trying to be responsible with understanding that, okay, like I would benefit probably from a bit of a box, but right now, like my motivating factor is like just seeing what works, what I can do. And like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
So it all started as a kid. Like, now
so because other people that like, thrive by either living in structure or really get off on providing structure aren't really gonna connect that. But which is kind of, I guess, silly to me too, though, because some people might also be trying to see what they're made of, but not allowing others to see what they're made of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, it's one of those things where like chaos, right? Even if you're still in a box, there's still going to be some type of chaos or disruption where then you have no choice but to then allow your creative parts to tap in and figure out, right? And it's like, imagine if you can do that and being, in this little spot, imagine what it'd be like if you're not in that, if there is no walls. I mean, that's the way that's the way I think.
Yeah.
Like, what would, like let's get out of that box. Let's make something bigger.
For sure. No, I get it, dude. I get it, man. So tell me about that move to Miami. What was that? How old were you? What what were you doing out there?
This was 2013, 2014. I was asked to come judge at a big CrossFit event called Wadapalooza.
Okay.
And when I was there, I was meeting all people from all walks of life. At that time, I was just like hungry, like I want to meet people. So this is like 7 years ago, and I came across this gentleman that was like, "Hey, I have my own gym. I have my own CrossFit gym. It's in Orlando, and my full-time person right now he's about to leave. He's gonna go on a different adventure, a different field. So that place is open." And me just kidding around, I was like, "Shoot, well, let me send you my resume." Just messing around. And he goes, "No, please do." It's like, I see the way you carry yourself. I see the way you go about things, and so it'd be a pretty cool thing to just kind of see where it goes. I'm like, all right, cool. So we kept the conversation open, and then, fast forward, I drove across the country, and I was like, all right, this is where I'm going to start my life. And we went from there, man. And it's like situations like that, they're lonely because it's just this belief system you have within you. It's like, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm just going to go. And, you're there and you're trying to make it work. But then when things are not firing up, it's like your back is against the wall. So what's up, man? Are you gonna stick it out or go back to something more go back to comfort? Like, what's up? And it only lasted like 8 months. The person that owned the gym wasn't handling the business correctly, so it was on a down spiral. So like there was no saving it. Decided to close it. Before he decided to close it, I put in like my 2 weeks, even though I was like an independent contractor. But like I put it in, and the guy didn't receive it well. It's like, I feel like in my life story, there's been a long of ending partnerships, but then, the other side not really taking it well.
So like even just boom right there, like there's a trend.
Yeah.
Where do you think, how do you think you show up in that?
Like, for sure. Oh yeah.
I know you reflect on that. So
I reflect on that like crazy.
So in that particular case, like what could you have, it's a slippery slope too, because at some point, like if you are constantly trying to just like, what could I do different? What could I have done different? Like there's a few layers you can pull back there, but at some point you can, there needs to be shared ownership, but for the sake of the exercise of this, like what was it that you think that you could have done differently?
Yeah. Knowing what I know now and the position that I'm in, I could have communicated more. I could have been a little bit more transparent, as much as like he was seeing the struggle, because he was struggling himself as well.
Yeah.
But then I could say the same thing about him. Maybe we could have had more sit downs like this, but it was almost non-existent. Because he was in a different world and I was just me in my own head. But even in that moment, of me, deciding to split ways, even that could have been an open up conversation, but it wasn't like that. It was more like pointing the finger from the other side.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's like a lot of it is about getting reps in, man, and trying to normalize in these conversations of like, bro, like I'm feeling this type of way.
They're uncomfortable, they're difficult, but they're super important.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, that's a big part of why I think the men's group that I'm a part of and trying to like kind of get set up here in Pasadena too is so important, because it's trying to normalize in these conversations, even though it is a little bit of like a feelings check in and then just like an open dialogue scenario. It's a different type of conversation that we're not typically having. So if you knew that he was going through his shit and you're going through your shit, both of you guys are going through your shit. Imagine how much better you guys both would have felt.
I mean, at the time I'm like 23, 24, and that gentleman's like in his late 50s. You know, it's like almost like a mentor to a mentee type of thing. I mean, obviously I can say all this what ifs, the shoulda, coulda, woulda type of thing, but you're absolutely right. No matter what, it's the dialogue, the conversation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man. So Miami, bringing it back. I mean, because how old are you?
I am going to be 31 in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you do have a few different tools in your toolkit. Yeah. You know, so like, what was that process of like chasing these different certifications or these different qualifications? And,
so even before Florida, I went to school for sports therapy and rehab, and I got lucky with that program because it's a rare program that you don't really find that specific niche in school. Mm-hmm. And so the thought process was, let me get this degree, my associates in this specific thing, and then continue school to be an athletic trainer. My dream at the time was to work for a professional basketball team.
Okay.
That was my thing. So while I was in school, I had the opportunity to work with pro-amp leagues, summer leagues, and there was a time where I had the opportunity to be a part of with the Sparks WNBA. Mm-hmm. One of my colleagues was then hired, which was freaking awesome to see her do that. But being a part of all that, I was like, okay, cool, I'm headed in the right direction. But before I graduated, that's when I got introduced to CrossFit. And so then my thought process...
Feeder program, injuries, let me help you.
Shameless plug, I can do that for you. So then I got introduced to CrossFit. I was like, okay, then I saw a need. Immediately I saw a need. I was like, okay, I mean, I can be part of the professional standpoint as far as like at a high elite level, or let me help these people that have no idea how their body moves, and I can go there. So let me apply what I got in school. So not only did I did the rehab things, but then I also got my massage therapy with it. That was a huge perks of those two programs being in one. And so then started practicing massage at CrossFit gyms before I became a certified level 1 trainer, coach. And from there, then it started evolving. I'm always the type of person that's like, okay, how can I learn more so that I can do better for my people? Mm-hmm. Then that's when I got my level 1. And then once I got my level 1, that's when my brain started thinking, I wanted to work for a facility that allows me to do both. And so then that's when the opportunity presented in Florida, and then Florida didn't work out. I came back here, and then from here I got an opportunity in San Diego, and fast forward, now we're here.
Yeah. And I mean, just me personally, like I really value people that are multifaceted, right? And multidimensional, and have that interest of gaining, different streams of knowledge. There's something to be said about that person who can just like strap in and do one thing and be like the master of that. But I'm more of a jack of all trades type of person. And so I appreciate that. And honestly, why, I joined forces with you to help me here, because my unique situation is that I need some of that, So like when we're putting together, say, these twice a week visits, there's going to probably be some days when I'm getting this pinched nerve, or, the hips are just like, I'm having some issues. So what I need isn't a lower body day. I need some hands-on work, 100%. So, in the umbrella of Spacebar, like that's exactly what we do. We're trying to bring in these different layers of things to meet you where you're at, and, provide a level of service to do that, right? So that's personally why I brought you on, also with, we just get along. So if I was I've never hired a trainer or a coach in my life.
Look at that.
Yeah,
what an honor.
I've kind of fallen down that similar path where it's like, oh fuck, I'm in so much pain right now. I need to go get a Band-Aid on this. So I'll go see my boy, Dr. Mike for a little hands-on, for some immediate release. But, shit's gotten so bad that you can't get it done in an hour, Like I need to get back to the foundation of stabilizing this hip and strengthening the hip flexors and pre-exhausting the hip flexors when we're trying to do some back squats. The glutes are firing. And again, like, I'm not a trainer, but I've been in this game for over 10 years. I know it all. I know all these things.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what that particular muscle is called or all these attachments, but I know how this shit works.
What movement can do for you.
And it's irrelevant what you know if you can't apply it.
Correct.
And I value that, and I appreciate that. And that's why, we're linking up, bro.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So yeah, man, that's unique. That's unique to find in somebody to be able to have one person that can kind of solve or help you solve some of those problems for yourself. So appreciate it, my guy.
Absolutely, man. That's why we're here.
Yeah. And then, so in the CrossFit community, are you finding that people value that recovery stuff and are prioritizing it, or has it been more of a conversation like, oh shit, I'm a little injured. I need some hands on me.
It depends how it's introduced to the person. A lot of people that come into the CrossFit world or a consistent fitness routine more now, so that there's so much to offer out in the world now, right? With different programs and stuff like that, is depending on the conversation from the trainer or the coach, the person that is helping them with their fitness journey. That'll determine how they put it as what level of importance in their life, right? So most cases, unfortunately, the conversation doesn't happen until an injury happens or it's something chronic or something nagging that's like bugging them, and they just can't seem to either want to do something about it or they have no idea of how to go about it. So depending on that. And so like for me, some of the things that I've done is, depending on the conversation I have with people, is I want to see what's important to them. It's like, some people may have like a pinch thing going on in their hip or something on their shoulder. And so then my question is, does it bother you that you can't do that one movement? And if the answer is yes, we dive in more. And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, what is something that you can try to do to just create maintenance, right? So again, it just depends on what direction. And so if the answer is it's not that important, but it's there, hey man, you should go get a massage maybe once a month. Something as small as that. But if someone goes, no, yeah, the fact that I can't even hang from the rig, that's troublesome, man. Like I want to get better. Like, okay, cool. There's ways to go about it. Let me show you how we can go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to go back to, when you were saying, the path that you were on was to become an athletic trainer for, say, a professional sports team. Mm-hmm. You kind of glossed over a little bit. It's like, oh, your friend got that, and then you kind of went a different route. Mm-hmm. But like, I didn't feel any type of ill feelings towards, one, your friend getting the job, or two, you having to shift and adapt to go a different path. Did you close off that path to becoming, like, say, an athletic trainer with the sports team?
I did.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
So, why I'm digging into this a little bit is because, I want people to try to understand that, like, we can have these goals, but we get so set on the path towards these goals, and it becomes problemsome at some point, right? Like, yeah, you need a level of focus, but when you can create more options for yourself, you have this overarching goal of, if you dig a little deeper and you play the game of like 5 whys, your goal might just be to live a sustainable life where you see what you're made of, right? Mm-hmm. That can be the goal. And if you are fixated on what becoming this trainer or this athletic trainer or whatever it is, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of heartache and a lot of struggle. So I think getting clear on what you want from your life, and then game planning on all these different options, because to create, say, a sustainable life, seeing what you're made of, like, that can be so many different things. And, whether you're aware of it or not, you must have done that because you slid right into another option and kept pursuing this, seeing what you're made of, and I think that's a lesson for a lot of people, and where it's like, we get so fixated on this thing and we're not really looking at what that thing is really giving us, which then is preventing us from finding multiple pathways to pursue that. You know, for me, it's all about flexibility within the nervous system, adaptation. And I know that it's pretty hard to adapt if you got one lane, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to downshift and get 3 lanes over. You know what I'm saying? They maybe hit that exit.
I agree. A lot of it had to do with my personal experience with injury and limitations that allow me to have that mental shift where instead of, like you said, fixating on the idea of something that could have been, but it didn't. So it was a decision, a conscious decision that was made. When I made that transition, I was like, okay, you know, let me help people that they don't even know that need the help. You know, opposed to like, I need it because this is my profession.
Gotcha.
So that was a transition mentally. Cause I mean, you know, growing up, I had surgery. The first time I had surgery was when I was like 11 or 12. I tore a ligament on my foot playing basketball. And,
you got crossed over?
I was going up for a layup. Someone put their foot up and tripped me, man. People are evil. Anyhow.
I was a little asshole when I was a kid, so honestly, that probably was me. That probably would have been. Bro, yeah, dude, I was a badass. I could not control myself.
Dude,
could not control
and then just laugh it out like you don't see no consequence behind what you just did.
I snapped this kid's leg in soccer game on purpose. God, and then, dude, it was, I mean, I feel so bad about this. Like,
dude, that hurts my stomach.
So much of it was literally just because I could not control my emotions, man. So I had, on my post on Instagram yesterday about like little breath work, like I had a mom like got into the comments, like, oh, I wish, you know, my 14-year-old son really needs this. And I was like, honestly, me as a 14-year-old needed this shit, you know? So like could not control myself, bro.
Yeah.
Like it was so bad. But anyways, yeah, so I probably would have been the one tripping you.
Now I love that you shared that. I want to touch on that too later. Yeah, someone tripped me. Come to find out, I tore a ligament, and I was born with really flat feet. So the doctor at the time wanted to do 2 for 1. I have 2 metal plates on both ankles to help increase my arch because my feet were so flat that I would overly pronate to the point where it would destroy my back and stuff. So I went into junior high with this big old boot on my left leg. First impressions is everything, right? And then that was one of my major injuries to start off thing, aside of like, I was a kid, I was a little overweight, a lot of back problems, and now understanding what to do about it. And then at that time, that's when my mom introduced me to a chiropractor who is still my chiropractor to this day. When I was 16, I had another major traumatic experience with my body. At that time, I was helping my dad remodel our home, putting down drywall, and just like, my dad's background is construction. So like, that's all he knows, hands-on hard work. And I'll never forget, next morning, woke up, rolled out of bed, and I couldn't stand up straight. It's almost like the initiation of like a kettlebell swing when you're just like hungover, right? I couldn't stand up. And it was a Saturday morning. We were supposed to get dressed to go to a Jehovah's Witness convention. And I was like, Ma, like, I can't stand up. And my mom was looking at me like, stop playing. Like, we got things to do. I was like, no, like, this is serious. Like, I cannot stand up. The moment I try, I spasm. It's like, okay, well, we got to fix this. Went to a nearby chiropractor. The guy made it worse to the point where I started spasming so much I couldn't even get on my feet anymore.
Shit.
So Saturday, Sunday, I spent every day laying on the ground. The only way I could go to the restroom is my dad picked me up to go use the restroom. Sunday night, going into like Monday morning, my mom was like, we all got to go to work. We can't leave you here. We have to check you into urgent care. Went into urgent care and it started getting worse. I'm spasming. I'm like, I'm 5 feet tall and I'm like in this fetal position, spasming. And almost like I'm having like a seizure. That's how extreme the spasms were. And now I'm being fed morphine to calm it down. And from there, the urgent care was like, we can't have him here overnight, or we can't have him here for more than 48 hours, something like that. And so then I was taken to a hospital. I think it was here in Pasadena, actually. And crazy thing is, as I recollect everything, there was no documentation. There was no pictures. There was no videos of the whole thing. And I asked my parents, how come it's like that time was so hard. Like, we did not want to document it. Like, we didn't, you know? So I was in the hospital for 2 weeks straight. They did CAT scans, MRIs, x-rays, you name it. They couldn't find a thing. And then their form of physical therapy was, hey, let me just help you get out of bed and let's try to walk. And my body was just so vulnerable that taking steps would trigger my spasms. And so like overly medicated through morphine just to help with the pain. I remember that was the first experience of being like high through morphine, where everything was like just different. Like the TV was floating towards me. My watch didn't look like my watch. And I'm over here like,
had you questioning God right there?
Yeah. I'm like, Dad, I think they stole my watch. I'm wearing a different watch. Like this ain't. I remember those times like vividly. And then so 2 weeks later, my mom was like, "Yo, like why didn't I think of this sooner? Let me take you to your chiropractor." Shout out to Dr. Guerrero. He's actually out in Glendora, and 2 times a week, deep tissue work on hip flexors, my QLs, quads, glutes, just to like relive in the area. So what had happened was there was so much inflammation going on with my muscles that it was compressing on my nerves. Nerve was then compressing onto my spine. So there needed some release to happen for all that to just come back to normal. So, but the fact that I was just so in it for so long, was spasming for that much time, it weakened all my muscles. And so it was like relearning how to walk again.
Yeah.
And all that experience is the reason why I do what I do now.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm a huge believer in body work, huge believer in strength and movement. I'm a body movement advocate. Like I'm huge with it, but it's this, there's not a one size fits all. There's a way to go about it with anybody's lifestyle and the way they go about life. And so, yeah, there's some more insight.
Yeah. And I resonate with a lot of that, because I've dealt with that shit over these. I mean, and this is what I am coming out of. You know what I mean? Like it's been since 2016 that I've had these issues, and it's like it's manifested in different ways. But at the end of the day, it's inflammation with these muscles that would not allow them to release, then causing issues on other antagonizing muscles. And then before you know it, you got these pinched nerves, whether it was in my back or, more recently my hip in the front, and it literally wrecks you. Mm-hmm. Then the moments you feel a little bit, so that goes on for, years or whatever. And then you feel a little like relief or whatever. You don't know what it was that gave you the relief. And you're like, all right, I'm gonna get back in this gym. And now you're trying to do these movements with all of these new imbalances from, your body being so locked up that every time you go to the gym, it just compounds the issue and you find yourself right back in this like pretty bad scenario. And yeah, dude. And like, I'm a pretty stubborn person, and it's like, I got shit to do where I'm giving myself this narrative that I'm not deserving to go and seek this help or this attention. So I'm just going to keep pushing through it. Mm-hmm. And it just compounds. It doesn't just, backfire these things don't necessarily solve themselves, and, when I found, like more of a breathwork practice, with the intention of, so I had this kind of new understanding that like, oh wow, that stress is kind of carried in the muscle, I know at this point, I'm not working out to cause this inflammation, I'm not, let's say sitting, more than I was in the past year. So like physically, I'm not really doing anything to cause these issues. However, I'm like very stressed out by creating, trying to start this business or whatever it might be. So I was like, oh man, maybe just stress in general, like it's just manifesting in this, right?
And then just being immobile does not help.
Right.
It's just stacked on.
For sure. So I was like, okay, like what can I do? Because anytime I move, shit gets worse. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm just always in this sympathetic state, I'm always just stressed out. So that was my how I started adopting like breath work. Is like, okay, breath can slide you into the parasympathetic state. I don't got to move. I don't got to do anything to do this. I just need to.
It creates circulation and it creates movement.
Yeah. And it helps you release on the exhale. Yeah. You're going to release. So it's like, okay, maybe I can just work as long as I become consciously aware of how I'm breathing, maybe I can just implement this, and like a commitment to that of like, 9 months to a year, just, I wouldn't say coincidentally, but boom, all of a sudden, wow, I'm feeling a lot better. Different. That wasn't a one-stop shot. It would just now, because I have this practice, doesn't mean that I never have issues, but it got me back. Correct. It got me moving, because it was bad. Like I couldn't stand up, and like stiff. When I would stand up, I looked like, I was literally bent and, almost like I was like dodging a Matrix bullet over here. You know what I mean? And it was just like, wow. But yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that I try to preach as much as I can. Is just like the body is meant to move. You know, some movement is better than no movement at all, and that means that can be different for anyone. But as long as it's intentional, because even like the breathing patterns is still a form of movement. It really is.
Yeah.
But it has to be intentional, right? Because if we just go on autopilot and we're stuck, that time compounds, and then all of a sudden I can't stand up anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks, you know, it sucks. But no, I'm feeling good. And it's like, you know, and it does seem counterintuitive. It's like, God damn, I hurt when I move, but moving is going to help, you know, and like more recently, like within the, you know, even before, you know, we decided to work together. Like I was moving some furniture and stuff like that out of the Sunset Beach spot. And it's like, you know, pretty active. And I was like, oh, well, I feel good afterwards, you know, like glutes were sore. I was like, I feel good because I had been dealing with, you know, the nerve thing since before December. You know, we're in March now, you know, so it'd been a while. And I was like, the first time I got active by moving this furniture, I felt better. So I was like, okay, there's a reminder there. You got to get it juicy. You got to get it juicy sometimes, you know what I mean? To loosen these things up. So that's why I was like, I got to keep this momentum. You know, I got to do this.
He said, I got to get it juicy.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, bro, I know we coming up on 45 minutes. I know you only got an hour, but
it went by quick, man.
Yeah, so let's just not make this the last conversation. We'll do this. We'll do more of
like
this.
a part 2.
Yeah, but
part 2.
Let me know, what is it that you're working for right now? Like what, you know, what's motivating to you? What do you want to see yourself accomplish? You know, we're early in the first, you know, coming to an end actually, the first quarter of 2022. What are just some personal goals that you want to try to knock out in 2022?
Yeah, I'm coming up in a year now since I moved back up here, so. Finishing up the year, I definitely want to get in front of more people that need what I have to offer. Whether it be getting them stronger or just getting them in the habit of moving. Right. And so that's like my current platform right now in every part that I'm in or every environment that I'm in. It's just, okay, how can we preach these movement? How can we preach that of movement, but at the same time, meet them at what they're at. So get in front of more people that are looking for something like this. Yeah,
for sure. And then on a personal level, you know, this podcast is kind of all over the place these days, but like the intention behind the Barco Collective was, you know, having courage to optimize and develop your essence, you know, kind of around like 4 different pillars, mind, body, relationships, and business, right? Like I feel like we need to have more multi-dimensional mentors that are out there trying to do things while acknowledging those pillars. You know, very often we have somebody who's crushing it in business and making a shit ton of money, but they're not true to their word, for example, or they're treating their lady bad, or they're just not working out. Like we see that very often, you know, like people are grinding, but they're letting their health fall. Within those pillars, mindset, your own personal health, your body, your personal relationships, and then your business. What do you think right now is most dialed in, and what do you think is most lacking?
It's a great question, man. I think the lacking part is that of the business standpoint, but for me is because, at least where my thought process is, because it's you know, I haven't been on this side of the city or living over here long enough. And so I'm trusting, you know, the process and that of being patient, but of course not patient sitting down waiting for things to happen, more so than actually, you know, acting. But I take pride in the last year alone of being able to be consistent on how I show up, no matter where I'm at and no matter how I'm feeling. So like if, you know, I gotta go teach that class or go train that person, if I'm not having a good day, I'm gonna put that to the side and be fully present for that person. Same thing goes when I go visit my parents or when I hang out with my little brother. It's not about me in that moment, it's about them. And so I want to continue doing that, staying consistent with, you know, showing up for people. As much as sometimes it's hard for myself to show up for myself like that, but I see the importance of doing it for other people, because then it just kind of resonates and somehow brings that energy for myself. But yeah.
All right. Yeah. And I think, you know, as you do that, like, you know, we need to do that, right? Like we need to one, yeah, for sure, double down on authenticity, but we also need to show up and do the work, right, that people are paying us for. So, if you find yourself in the position where you can't openly share with the client, like you find that to be unprofessional, like I don't give a fuck. I have some deep conversations sometimes with clients or whatever.
It depends how much rapport has been built.
Yeah, but I think just remembering in that, and everyone else as well, is that just because you got to show up and put on a show sometimes, it is really in your benefit to seek out places that you can vent, that you can, because it's hard to do that on your own. It's hard to have this practice of journaling. And, if you're just reflecting on the self is looking at it from its own viewpoint that has all these little friggin' nuances to try to justify whatever the behavior is that you're doing, or, make you feel a certain type of way. And no matter how sick it might be, like for me, it's, I try to, to me, it's like, I come back to like being this martyr. And I find myself like, when I try to do these things, I've put myself in a dark, depressed, sad state when I try to work on my own stuff by myself. But when I have an opportunity to talk with other guys or whatever, that allows me to see the mirror and, see myself in others, and allows me to get some of these things off my chest in a healthy way. So I would just, continue to advocate for that, not only for you, but for other people out there. Because if you're like me and you're like Miguel, you got to show up and you got to put on a face, and you got to give this person the best customer service possible. And then if you're not,
turn around, like, who's doing that for you?
For sure. I mean, it's like, if you're not shining the light on your shadows a little bit, because the thing is, like, when you're putting on that show in your head, like, you're still a little upset or a little bothered, whatever it might be. Like for me, how that looks like, I put on, say, a good show on the customer service on the front end, right? So it's like, if someone was to come in, I'm in my own little mood, but as soon as they come in, I'm about to kill you with some education on Kava or whatever it might be, right?
That switch goes on for sure.
And then this person might be annoying as fuck. Like, they might say something, but I'm not going to say anything bad. So what I'm actively trying to work on is to check that person a little bit, like just shine a little bit of light on that shadow right there. Because if I don't, and I continue to put on this face of trying to make that person like me, what I'm left with is, by the time I get home and go see Laura, that shadow comes out there, because it's going to come out, right? So it's like balancing this show you got to put on with also. I
love that you expressed that. Yeah, that's something I've been playing around with lately. Not to say like #me too, but you're absolutely right. Like it not necessarily exposes the situation, but it's like, okay, man, you're going 100 miles per hour. Let me just put a little bit of brakes in there for you. Because the way you're going about something might not be right. Yeah. No one's told you, so let me just share a little something.
For sure. So it's all about balance, like we're all about grinding over here, we believe in that, but we also, need to, because we know that within ourselves, we have to be even more conscious to try to have, healthy conversations and slow down and figure out how to recover, because the other side we got that. And
I love that, man. I think that's part of the reason, besides me, you being the great person that you are and us being able to have these conversations, is the fact that you create these environments for people to be more human. And I love that, because we're in a place, in a world, in a society where, it's claimed to, hey, be yourself. But then all of a sudden it's like, all right, don't beat yourself too much. Like, you can tone it down. But then when we're in these situations, we're like, nah, man, speak your mind. Like, it is okay. Yeah. Say that. Yeah, so the fact that you created, the man group, which it was an honor to be a part of it one time, but I need to do it more often. Being in that position where you can express yourself and being vulnerable and let it all out there, so that, you can't keep it all in your head, man. You gotta share that stuff.
Bro, yeah, you end up making some poor decisions when you do. I know I have in the past.
The same.
Well, all right, man. Well, with that being said, let people know where they can reach out to if they need to ask any questions or want to connect.
Yeah, I'm pretty active only on Instagram. It's _ Miguel Angel Sanchez. That's what's up. Yeah, so if you want to slide in my DMs, I'm there.
Yeah, and also you are also hosting a podcast on the Reason Fitness podcast.
Yeah, find your reason. So you can find us at Finding Reason Podcast. It's on IG as well.
Yeah, very, very quality, very good, man. Like you and Drew, the banter between you two is solid, man. I enjoy listening to those. So Head on over there, give that a listen. But until next time, y'all, we out. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Jacob.